Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I would like to talk to you about the Darvas Box strategy. It has an arrows indicator and a scanner indicator. Both of these are on my website right here. I'll share the link in the description box below, and it's also on the MQL5 website. I'll also share this link, and the MQL5 blog post also has a detailed description on how to use this. So let's get started with the strategy. Right here we have the Darvas scanner. So the scanner will show you the current percent and it will show you how many wins, and this second number right here is consecutive wins, and it will show you how many losses and what the total profit was in points and the total loss, and the last signal arrow right here and how many bars back that signal had occurred. So right now the settings that I'm using, they are very restrictive, which is why we get very few signals, but I'll show you in settings how you can change this if you're scalping or if you're using binary options, and how to change this for long-term trading. Let me just go into this pair because it's giving the best percentage, and I'll just talk about the Darvas boxes real quick. I have a much detailed post explaining how this indicator works, just the Darvas box indicator, so you can check it out if you like. It uses this indicator to create these boxes, and right here this is the detailed post which explains these Darvas boxes and the different modes. But if you are not really sure what each of these modes are, then I would suggest that you just leave it to the default settings. Okay, so whenever price is trending in a certain direction, uptrend or downtrend, in that case price will always make smaller ranges and then it will have a breakout and it will continue with the trend, only to make a small range again and it will continue with the trend, and so on. So Darvas boxes, it basically finds these smaller ranges and it finds those breakout points. It shows us the best entry points and also the best place where we can place our stop losses. Like right here, if we get this signal, in that case the best position to put your stop loss would be right under this box. And once again, if price keeps moving upwards and it crosses this box, in that case you can move your stop loss right here. And if you see that a box appears against the trend, like this orange box, it means that this is a downward Darvas. So this is against our current trend, which is why we will ignore these signals. And right now we have a default setting where it will check if the Darvas box has crossed this MA or not, meaning that the Darvas box top would be above the MA and the box bottom will be below the MA. Only then it will consider that signal. So if I turn that setting off, in that case it will show all of these as possible signals as well. So let me just put everything off at first, like NRTR, MA, slope and Heiken, and also the HTF properties. And let me just use the moving average. So right here it is checking if the box has crossed the moving average and only then considering these signals. And if I change that setting right here, Darvas box crossed MA, if I keep this to false, in that case it will use all of these as possible signals. So if you are scalping and if you want very small price movements, in that case you can keep that setting as false and just be careful not to trade against the trend. But if you are trading long term, in that case I would suggest that you leave this setting to true because it gives you much better signals. Right here you can see the percentage. I've set that to true, so we get a much higher percent. And also if I change the moving average, like right here we have 100 period, if I set this to something like 60, in that case we will get a lot more signals because it checks that the Darvas box has crossed this MA. Right here it has crossed this, like that. And whenever you get this debug message, no MA across, it means that the box has not crossed the moving average. If you get a debug message like no MA, in that case, right here, no MA, in that case the Darvas box is not above or below the MA. For downwards trend, it will check for these boxes, these orange boxes, and for an uptrend it will check that these blue boxes are above the MA. Not necessarily the whole box, it will basically check the close price of whenever the signal occurs. And sometimes these Darvas boxes, they are quite big. In that case we would like to ignore these. So it uses max height and min height to check for the box height, and that height is in points. So right here, minimum Darvas box height and max, and you can define the point value for each time frame. Like right here we are on M30, so it will check that the Darvas box height should be more than 40 but less than 700 points. And you can use the crosshairs tool to find out, like for this box, if I use the crosshair tool to check the box height, I can see that this is 888, which means it's more than 700, which is why it has ignored this particular signal. So if you are scalping and you would like much smaller boxes, in that case you can change that. And if you are long-term trading and you are okay with having, slightly bigger boxes, then you can just set that minimum and maximum value. And this one, max entry distance from Darvas, this is the, suppose if a signal occurs, then right here the closing price where that signal occurred, that distance from the nearest edge of the box, it will check for that distance. And right here for M30 we have 240 points. So if a signal, if price has already reached too far, in that case it will ignore that particular signal, and you will get a debug message saying max entry. I don't see it right now, but that will happen if price has already gone too far away from the box. The next check that we have is volume bars. So it will check for high volume bars using this indicator, volume candles. Volume candles explained. So you can get the indicator from this link, and it will check if price has a strong volume. Like right here, these green bars, they indicate that price has a very strong volume right here, and these red bars, they indicate price has a very strong volume and it is a downward bar, a bearish bar, and the green ones are strong volume bullish bars. So if that setting, the number of volume bars, you can set a maximum value of 3 bars because it will check the previous 3 bars. So right here it will check the signal bar and the 2 bars before that. So if I have something like 3, then it's very rare for all 3 bars to have a high volume bar. So I'll just press OK, and I just get one signal where there were 3 consecutive high volume bars. If I set that to something like 2, in that case I get 16 signals, but by default this is set to 0 because this check is set to off. If you set this to 0, in that case it won't check for volume bars. So you get a lot more signals. So when scalping, you can keep this volume check to off, but in case you are using binary options, in that case usually right after a high volume bar, price still continues to go upwards. So if you are using binary options on say M5 and you want to check for high volume bars and maybe keep 2 continuous high volume bars, so you can use this setting for that. So right now I've set this to 0. We already talked about the MA Check and this setting, and you can set the MA period to 60 or 100 or whatever you like, and right here this is the price that it will check, like price above MA or below MA. So if I set this to open price, in that case it will check for that the open price should be above the moving average. By default it will stay at close price. And the next one that we have is NRTR. Now NRTR is very useful for finding support and resistance, and also for finding the current trend. I also have a detailed post describing how NRTR works, so you can check that out just to see what each of these individual settings mean, like KATR and period ATR, and that will show you how the NRTR works. So basically for the current indicator we are only using this, the blue line which shows the NRTR uptrend and the red line which shows the NRTR downtrend. So if we get an up arrow, in that case it will check the NRTR is trending upwards. For down arrow it will check that the NRTR is trending downwards. So if I set this to true, in that case if you get this no NRTR, that means that this was actually a downtrend and we have an up arrow signal, which is why it will ignore this signal and this one. And the next setting that we have is the moving average slope. If I set that to true, then it will check the MA period. Let me set that to 60 and maybe change this MA to 100. So for slope it will check MA 60, and let me also change this to 100. So if I set a much higher moving average, in that case it will show me much fewer signals, and if I set a slightly lower MA like 30 or 40, in that case I will get many more signals. And same way for moving average slope, I also have a video tutorial which will explain the EMA slope in much detail, and this indicator is also available on the MQL5 website, and it's also there on my website. So all of these indicators are not necessary for you to download, but in case if you just want to place them on the chart, then you can get them from this website. I'll also put this link in the description. So the Darvas arrows, it will use all of these indicators internally. You don't have to have these on your Metatrader platform, but you can just have this if you would like it on your template, on your chart template. Now next we have the Heiken check. The same way as with NRTR, that will look for the Heiken trend, whether it's an uptrend or a downtrend. If I have the Heiken right here, if I set this to true, so I would suggest that you either have NRTR or Heiken, whichever you prefer. But if you have too many of these checks on, in that case it will give you much fewer signals. And if you are using Heiken smoothed, like if you have period 1 as 2 and period 2 as 13, then it will give you very small Heiken bars. So for that you can keep this blank. But in case if you are using much smaller periods and you would like to check for the Heiken candle length, then you can use the same format that we have earlier, like right here. You can use something like this to check for minimum Heiken length. Maybe if I set this to 10 or something, then it will check that Heiken bar body is at least 10 points. But by default this is blank, which means it won't check for any candle length. And the next setting that we have is HTF Moving Average. So this is the higher time frame moving average. By default we have this at 200 value, and we have number of time frames 2. So right now we are on M30. So for H1 and H4 it will check if price is above the 200 moving average. And finally we have the max spread, and it will check, suppose if I set this to 10, in that case it will only use pairs which are below this spread. If I use 20, then it will use pairs which are below the spread 20. Just use 0 if you don't want to use this. Everything else is for the alerts and the positioning of this panel and also the arrows. And you can also change the panel text colors and the background, etc. Now let's go to the calculation of like how it calculates these signals. So I'll just set all of this back to false so that we get many more signals. So it will use these past bars, and it will start at shift and go back 5000 bars, and it will check for a particular signal whether all of these checks match. And once you get a signal, after that, suppose if we are using fixed take profit and a fixed stop loss, then it will use these point values to create the SLTP. So let me press OK. So right here, as you can see that the fixed stop loss is very close, which is why it gets hit most of the time. Now if I go back and if I use a variable stop loss, by default if this is true then it will take the fixed one, but if I set this to false, in that case it will take this variable stop loss. So you can set the stop loss at pivots right here. These orange dots, these are the support pivots, and these blue dots, these are the resistance pivots. So if I place the stop loss at pivots and if I set the pivot number as 2, it will check the last 2 pivots, like right here, this one and this one, and it will find the lower pivot out of the 2 and it will use that as stop loss. If I set that number to 3, in that case it will use the past 3, like this, this and this, these 3 pivots, and it will find the lowest value and use the stop loss over there. But right now we have a minimum stop loss set. Let me remove that so that it's clearer. Sorry, right here we have the max stop loss set. If I remove that, right here, so in this case it will check for this and this and this, the last 3 pivots, and whichever one has the lowest value it will use that pivot. And for sell signals it will use the whichever pivot is the most distant, like right here. For this we only have these 2 pivots, so it will use this one, but if I keep that value to 1 then it will use the first one. And the other stop loss value which we can use is stop loss at Darvas Box edge. So in that case it will ignore all of these pivots and it will just keep the stop loss value right at the edge of the box right here. And the third stop loss that we have is stop loss at moving average. So the moving average which we use right here, suppose I set this back to 60 and also change this to 60. That case it will use this stop loss. Now with the variable stop loss we can also have variable take profit. If I go back, and for that I'll need to set this to false. Only then it will use this TP ratio. Now if I set the stop loss at MA and if I set the TP ratio to 1.2, then it will use the take profit 1.2 as a 1.2 multiplier of the stop loss. If you are using short term scalping, then you can use a ratio like 1 or 1.5 depending on how much you want to trade. And this right here, the stop loss extra points. Now sometimes you might want the stop loss to be slightly higher than the box, or in case of a buy signal you might want it to be slightly lower than the box. In that case you can use these extra points. So it will take the stop loss which you define and it will add these point values to that. So if I press OK, then it will just, like right here we have stop loss at MA, and it will add these points to that stop loss. I think for M30 we have 40 points, so it will add those 40 points to the stop loss. And you can also set a max stop loss value, because sometimes if you have that at the box edge, then the box might be too big, and in that case you might want to limit your stop loss. So you can set that to something like this. So now for M30 we have 200 points. So in case the stop loss is more than 200, like right here, the stop loss would have been here, but this is the max stop loss, these 200 points. And the take profit, it will be based on this stop loss instead. Now in case if you are interested in binary options, in that case you can set this signal expiry bar. So if I have take profit, stop loss, everything set to false, and also the variable stop loss to none, and if this is calculated as no stop loss, then take profit will also automatically be 0. In that case it will use the signal expiry bars to find out whether the price went up or down based on the entry price. So if I press OK, in that case it won't use any SLTP lines, it will just check 30 bars after the entry point. So this is useful if you are using something like binary options, or if you are scalping and you are only interested in the next 10 bars. So you can press OK, and that will just check the next 10 bars whether price went up or down. And for scalping and binary options, you might need some different settings. By default it will use the points percent, meaning it will count the win points and the loss points, and based on that it will calculate this percent value. But for binary options we are only interested in whether the win count has gone up or down. Like we are only interested in how many wins and how many losses, and this one, how many consecutive wins. So if I have changed the settings. I have set the max past bars to only 1000, and I have used no stop loss. This set file is specifically for binary options, and I have also set many of these like HTF MA to false, and also the volume. I have also set the volume to 0. So in that case it will only look for the next few bars. Like right now I have 3 signal expiry bars. So right here we can see that the pair is not performing very well, but with this you can also find out that we had 4 losses but only 2 consecutive losses. So in case you are using martingale or something like that, this number becomes very important. So even though we have higher amount of win rate considering these points, but the actual win rate is very low because we are having 4 losses. You can see in the scanner how well your current strategy is performing, and you can skip those pairs which are giving you lesser ratio. Now whatever settings we have over here, we can always save that in a set file. Like right here I have this as binary option set file, and when we go to the scanner we can use the same set file as we have in the arrows indicator. So I'll just load that M1 binary and I'll set this to maybe M15, or I'll just leave it right now. And we can also set which template we would like right here. I can save this template to something like, I think we already have this binary template. And right here I'll just load the set file, and I'll also load the same template name. So for the scanner and for the arrows indicator, the set files are interchangeable. So now we see what the new settings will be. And same way, if I am using something like higher time frame, like these are for M30, so these are the M30 settings. In that case, I can use the M30 template. Now please note that the set files are different. Like right here I have this set file and the template file will be different. So right here we need the template file name. So I'll just change this to show you. Like if I use this 1_Darvas, only this template, then when I click on this button, it will open up that template. So if I go to this chart, and right here also I will need to load the exact same settings. Like I loaded this set file in the scanner, so I'll just have this. Then I'll need to save this template to anything that we like. I usually like to keep the set file and the template file name to the exact same thing. So the TPL file, and I can just name this to the same thing, or you can also have this .tpl. Either way it will look for that template. Now if I open up any pair, then it will open that particular template. And when saving templates, also be careful, because it might use the same object names, and these object names might get carried over in the template. And if you have some overlapping objects, in that case just refresh it and you will get all the new settings and the new objects. I think I've explained everything in the arrows indicator, and the scanner has the exact same settings as the arrows. All of these other settings, they are the common settings which are there in all my scanners, and I will set a link in the description box which will explain all of these settings and all of these alert settings. And for this specific indicator, you can have the stop loss, take profit values, these values on and off. Suppose if you are only using binary options, in that case you are not interested in the SLTP and you are not interested in the actual profit points, so you can just set these to false, and it will take up a lot less space on your chart, and so you can load up more symbols. And if you are not interested in the number of wins or losses, but you are only interested in finding out how many points did we profit, in that case just set this to false, and it will only show you the profit and loss points. So just go over this post. It will explain everything in much greater detail, how the win-loss calculation works, how we have the variable stop loss of fixed SLTP values, and I also have this section which will show you what each of these debug messages mean. So just go over this in case if you have any doubts, and just be careful not to trade when market is whipsawing or if you have a very choppy market. Like on M1, in case if you are using binary options, then sometimes you'll get right here, as you can see, we have a range going on because price keeps crossing this moving average. So signals like this are not good to trade. Only trade when a trend is ongoing, like right here. And on M1, sometimes you will find that the price behaves very erratically. In that case, I would also suggest that you skip those signals. And always skip ranging signals. Only use the trending signals when price is above or below the moving average. And for strategy tester in Metatrader, it only allows a single time frame and a single pair for testing, which is why if you use the HTF MA features, then it might not give you reliable results. So just be careful, and if you want to try this out, then I would suggest that you download the demo version and just check out all of the settings. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope that you enjoy using this. Let me know if you have any doubts or queries in the comments. And another thing, I won't be able to add any new features to this, the arrows or the scanner, because the scanner indicator uses iCustom to call the arrows indicator, and we already have 64 settings, so I won't be able to add any new settings. But in case if you have any problems or if you see any bugs, please let me know in the comments, or you can write an email and I'll be happy to help out. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you have a great day. Thanks.